Hey Facebook, it is Sarah P. How are you? So I am testing out I think it's new. I've not seen it before, but it is a Facebook Live screen share tool, which means that you can screen share to live on your Facebook videos, which I thought was really, really cool. So I thought I would have a quick play around with it. And for my Facebook Live to do today as part of my Facebook Live for a day, every day for a year, I thought I would talk you through one of the types of brochures that we use in our business when we are packaging up deals to investors. And what's great about this Facebook feature is that it means I'll be able to show you a lot more of the stuff that we do if I can get this to work. So if you guys are on here live and you can see the brochure, just stick in the comments for me that you can see it so that I know that it's working, because I've never done this before. I'm really appreciate your help just to let me know if I'm getting it working right or not. It would be super helpful. I can see there's a few of you on. If you can see a document that basically says the property sourcing hub, just stick in the comments that you can see it for me so that I know that at least you're looking at the same thing that I'm looking at before I start talking about it. So I can see there's a few of you on. So just for those of you that are joining, I am doing my daily Facebook Live, but I've discovered a really cool live screen share tool, and I just want to talk you through a brochure. So brilliant, Jim's just commented to say that you can see it. That's amazing. Right, okay, good. So I know that it can be seen, so at least I've managed to get that technology working, which is ace. I feel like I've learned something now today. Thank you very much, Jim, for that. I appreciate that. So I'm going to just spend 10 minutes talking through a brochure so that you guys can see what we do. But let me just set the scene as to what this brochure is used for. So when we are sourcing and packaging up for investors, when we have a property or an investment opportunity that comes across our desk that we have got secured, or one of our masterminders has got secured, one of our JV partners has got secured, anyone that we're working with passes us a deal, we get all of the information. We get calculators, we get comparables, we get photographs, floor plans, all of these sorts of things. Now, what we have to do as a packaging agent when we're working on behalf of the investor, our only job really, is to gather the facts, present the facts to them so that we've made it easy for them to buy. So what we do as a business is we package up, and in the process of packaging up, and when we obviously are checking all the numbers and things like that, we put together a brochure. Now, a lot of you guys will be on the same mailing lists as I'm on, and you see deals being submitted out to the market with, an email that's got one or two lines in it that just says, gross income minus costs equals profit, but there's no more information than that. And actually, especially when I started out, I remember looking at these sorts of emails and thinking, it doesn't tell me enough for me to be able to make a quick decision on whether I would want this particular deal or not. So when I started doing the packaging side of things, I really wanted to make sure that I was sourcing on behalf of my investor and I was making it easy for my investors to buy. So we created basically a template, and to do this, we use a website called Canva. So it's canva.com. And it's free and it's really easy to use design tool. One of the guys that I work with introduced me to Canva. Kelly, she introduced me to Canva a year or so ago, and it's brilliant. It's really good tool that you can use to design different types of graphics and brochures and things like that. So what I'm going to talk you through right now, and what you can see on the screen right now, is actually the brochure that we would put together to present a deal to an investor. So I'm going to talk you through all the different aspects of it, because hopefully it will help you to structure or tailor the brochures that you're putting together for your investors in your business. So, okay, this is obviously the first page. Now, the first, obviously, you can see we've got the company name, Property Sourcing Hub. That is my packaging side of things. In the top right corner, you should be able to see like a code. This is a code that we just use to help us identify. So we use this code in our CRM system. It helps me to just identify which house it is. Now, generally speaking, when we're putting out a brochure, what we won't do to start with is put out details like the address, the postcodes and things like that, because when you're very early on in a relationship with an investor, you need to be cautious. You need to make sure that you're being careful and, protecting the work that you've done. So we use a code to internally identify which house this brochure relates to. And you know, when you're doing multiple deals like we are, you can't just talk about the HMO in Doncaster, for example, because you might have 6 HMOs in Doncaster all at the same time. So having a code means that everyone in the team knows what we're talking about whenever we're talking about a particular property. So that's why we use the code. Obviously, the next bit you'll be able to see just says director developer. So what we're trying to do straight off the bat is to set the scene with our investor so that that investor knows what type of deal they're looking at. So for example, on this one, this was a developer building a block of flats and we were dealing directly with them. There was an agent in the middle, but actually the negotiations were being, this was a JV deal that I did with one of the guys that we've worked with, and he was dealing directly with the developer. So we want to put on here, if it's a direct to agent deal, if it's an off-market deal, if it's a direct-to-vendor deal, if it's a direct-to-developer deal, we just put it on that front cover so that the investor knows what sort of relationship we're working on straight off the bat. On the next page, we just do a bit of a summary about who we are. It's quite a boring page, but it just basically has, you know, me, you know, who in the team. Kat's not with the team anymore, but at the time she was, our brand and marketing manager, Kelly, and then who we also worked with on this which was Ross. Many of you all know Ross. At the bottom of the second page, you've got our office details, so our registered office and also our trading office where we actually work from, a phone number to get hold of me, and obviously our company name. Now I'm not sure what this add a comment box is that's appeared. There we are, I've got rid of it now. Okay, so then on the next page we start to get into more of the details about the property itself. So we've got a photograph in there of a sample property. So actually this wasn't, because it wasn't built yet, this wasn't a photograph of the actual apartments, but this developer has developed lots of different types of sites, and so had sample photographs of the buildings that he's developed and the quality and the standard that he does it to. So this is one of the photos that he gave us just to give a bit of an idea of what that looks like. So we put the photo in there. Now on this page, what we're doing is kind of setting the scene for the investor in terms of the location. So this isn't specific to the property. This is about the actual area itself. Now, when you're dealing with investors, in my experience, they're not always based in the area they're buying in. You know, we have overseas investors. We have investors that are based in London that buy up north a lot. You know, we've got investors all over the country that are buying in different areas. And so one of the main things we want to try and do at this point is set the scene about why this area is a good investment. Remember, this document and the whole process around finding a buyer for a deal is about setting the scene and making it easy for them to buy. So by explaining things like how far it is from the nearest big city, you know, what regeneration's happening in the town, you know, just a bit of a summary about the project itself, you know, it helps to set that scene. And obviously you can see in there as well, we've put a map. Okay, so that's a map just to show where the location is for that particular property. So again, we're starting to tell the story about why the investor should buy this particular deal, right? So the next thing on the next page, you can see we've got a floor plan. Now, sometimes, I'll be really clear and really honest, sometimes we can't get floor plans, especially to this detail. Because we were direct to developer, obviously we had all of the planning information, we had access to everything we needed. Generally, if you're dealing with a vendor, they probably won't have this. You might have to draw up a floor plan or have them draw up a floor plan or something like that, okay? So, but on this one, because it was a developer, we had the floor plan. So we put that in there. Again, what this is doing is it's telling the story about what the actual site is, and what that investor is buying into. Now, this was a block of 8 apartments. They were all 2-bedroom apartments, one single block of 8, and they were being done on a rent-to-rent serviced accommodation. So the developer was renting it to our investor. The investor was then running it as serviced accommodation block, and obviously was making his profit from the difference between what he's paying out in rent, his costs, and the money he's getting in from service accommodation. So as you can see on here, we're then starting to talk in this section here about the, you know, what it is. It's a block of 8 apartments, 2-bed, brand new, obviously, because they were just being built on the A10 corridor, and it really starts again to set the scene. So the investor can then start to say, right, I can do my research into Harlow, into Stevenage, into whatever areas it is, you know, wherever this was in the UK, you'd be able to do the same thing. Now over here, we've got a list of all the different projects that happen, like the development projects that happen in the area. And this serves in 2 different ways. One, it helps to understand what sort of regeneration is happening in an area. but also you can start to see what big projects are happening. So if you were going to do serviced accommodation for contractors, for example, by doing research into the projects that are taking place in a town, you can then start to identify where you're going to get your residents and your guests from. If you don't want to rely on the holiday Airbnb kind of booking.com market, you can look at the corporates, and actually by including this sort of information into a brochure for an investor, you're starting to tell them how they're going to make their money. You're making it easy for them to make their money. So that's why we include stuff like that. On the next page, we have again some more photographs, and again there were 2 blocks on the same site, and block 1 was already built, rented out, and all up and running. And this photograph here was again to demonstrate the condition and the quality of the accommodation that was being provided as part of this particular deal. Even though it hadn't been built yet, we really want to be able to tell that story and make sure the investor can see why it's a great opportunity for them. And then we do basically here, we're setting the scene again, we're telling even more of the story in terms of the numbers. The fact that it was sourced directly, the fact there were no mortgage and lender issues, because actually the developer didn't have any lending on this particular site, that full permission had been granted for serviced accommodation use, and that the managing agent that was kind of in the middle have all been informed around the serviced accommodation plans for use of this particular site. And we put in, obviously, when we're sourcing and we're securing it, we know that serviced accommodation operators are likely to want to install things like key boxes, or access and things like that, or have maybe somebody on site that can provide access. So we need to include in here, again, to make it easy for the investor to know for sure that they can use this site for what we're selling it to them for. So we put that in there. The accommodation will take 5 to 6 people per stay, depending on how many beds and things they put in. 2 people in each bedroom, and then obviously a living space in the a sofa bed, in the living space. The fact that there was CCTV on site, the fact that there was parking, again, that makes it easier for an investor to sell it at the other end. If they're trying to secure guests and residents to come, by having things like CCTV, free parking, and this sort of stuff, it helps to either up the rent or secure your bookings. So we want to make sure we're showing the investor that it really, really will benefit them to take on this site. The fact that the investor also on this particular deal, this doesn't always happen, but when you're dealing directly with developers, you can, if you're getting early enough, you can help to contribute to what you want the finished options to look like. So if, for example, you've got an investor running blocks of serviced accommodation, but their branding is all bright orange, for example, if you've got a developer who hasn't painted yet, actually you can then say to the developer, well, our buyer wants it all to be bright orange. I hope that makes sense. If there's any questions about this, by the way, guys, stick it in the comments, because I'll be happy to answer them. For those that have just joined, I'm testing out my discovery of the new Facebook Live screen share tool, and it seems to be working, but hopefully you guys can see the slide, see the brochure as I'm talking through it. Obviously then on this next bit, we talk through what the getting started costs are. So obviously the first month's rent, the admin fee, the sourcing fee, and the furniture. They're the key things that the investor's going to have to pay out before they can get started. That's kind of the getting started money. Remember, this is a block of 8. Those figures obviously are quite high, but this is a block of 8 units. It wasn't just 1 unit. And then under here, you can see we've included our financial analysis calculator. So the financial analysis calculator shows on this particular site that it will break even at 55% after VAT has been removed. So after the VAT man's been paid, it breaks even at 55%. So on each unit, and then each unit, when it's at sort of the 85 to 90, you're making £500 a month on a 2-bed. Obviously on a block of 8, that was £500 times by 8, which was obviously a great profit for the investor on a monthly basis, on an annual basis as well. The next page, again, is just another photograph of the condition and the quality of what this particular developer built like, so that the investor can really see what the condition's like. And then we start to get into our comparables. So we know that this is being sourced for serviced accommodation. So in order to show the investor what they're going to be able to rent it out at, we need to take some comparables from the internet, basically. Now, you'll probably recognize these. These are booking.com screenshots. On a Mac, you can take screenshots really easily with Command, Shift, and 4, I think it is. On a PC, I'm not so sure. I know you can do it, but I don't know how to do it because I don't use a PC ever. But I'm sure there is a way that you can do it. And then we just drag and drop those screenshot JPEGs into the brochure. So on this, you can see that the comparables are showing somewhere between kind of the £120 a night mark and £150 a night mark, which if I scroll back up here, you'll see on the nightly rate, which is this on the left hand side, we've used £120, which is the lowest comparable that we found. So £120 is this one. Obviously it goes up to 150. We use the lowest, but what we're showing here to the investor is actually, if you really put out good quality, you may be able to even find more money in the deal because we've only put it in at 120. Now it's 120, obviously that's including VAT, so these figures here are including VAT. Once you take off the VAT, that's what's left to pay for all the bills and all those sorts of things. But the reason we put comparables in is because we need to show and make it easy for that investor to understand how we've come up with those numbers and to prove effectively that those profits that we're predicting are realistic and they've come from somewhere that is founded on fact, which is obviously based on the current market, what rooms are being put out at, etc. And we got this from booking.com on this particular deal. If you're doing HMOs and things like that, actually you'll be looking at spareroom.com, Rightmove, rooms and things like that. For service accommodation, it's booking.com, Airbnb, those sorts of sites. And then on this particular one, that was really all we had to share at this point with the investor. In some deals, actually, there's lots and lots more information, in which case we put it in there. You know, if we'd had quotes for works, there wasn't any works on this particular deal, but if we'd had quotes for works, we'd put the quotes in. If we needed specialist insurance or anything, we would put the quotes in for that. You know, if there was any additional bits and pieces that need to go in, we'd put them in there. And then the last page is the next steps page, which basically just says, if you're interested, then the next steps are to give me a call or drop one of the team an email or a phone call, and we can arrange viewings and things like that. So it's pretty comprehensive what we put together. And what it does a couple of things. One, obviously, I want my branding to be seen as much as possible. Because it starts to build a relationship with our audience and things like that, which is really, really, really important as a business. But at the same time, if as a sourcing agent, you're going to the effort and the energy of researching all this stuff, which you should be, you cannot put a deal together unless you know what the comps are. You cannot put a deal together unless you know about an area. You cannot put a deal together unless you know what the demand looks like. It just doesn't, you just can't do it. So if you go into all the effort of figuring out all of that information, then you may as well include it in the brochure so that the investor, whilst there's a responsibility on the investor to go and do their own research, of course there is, you know, this is what you found at the time you were doing the research. Your investor will need to go and check the due diligence on it, of course. You know, that is definitely their responsibility. But our job, and the reason we get paid so well, you know, the reason we could put fees like £28,000 against the deal is because we're making it easy for them to buy. We're shortcutting that process for them so that they can go and double check, but they don't have to do the real nitty gritty digging. Now, for example, if we were doing an HMO, in here you would see on an HMO brochure, the person at the council we'd have spoken to about whether or not HMOs licenses are being approved in that area, whether any additional planning was required in that particular area. You know, we go to that level to check 100% that that deal can run. And if we haven't got all of that information, then we wouldn't sell it. So I hope that's been really, really helpful. I wanted to play around, really, in truth. I just wanted to play around and test out my new tool of screen sharing. I can't do video and screen share at the same time yet. I'm sure it's possible, but I haven't worked out how to do it. But I thought, you know what, I would just talk you guys through what a brochure looks like in our world, how our investors receive their deals. And if you're going to be one of the top sourcing agents in the country, is what I hope you all will become, the standard of the communication, the standard of the content and the descriptions and the effort that you need to go to really, really show your investors why they should buy the deal from you. So I thought I'd just share that with you. I hope it's been helpful. If there's any questions or anything like that, please just let me know. For now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will probably catch you tomorrow. See ya. Bye.